Izak, have you enjoyed the show so far?
Good evening, yes. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this broadcast of the AgriLeader Circle. The Circle is where we gather a group of people with a wide social media reach, and we from a farming background, and we discuss all the hottest topics from the day. We're live here from Groundswell, a farming show, actually a regenerative farming show, very much with a festival feel. And tonight we'll talk about all things regen ag or regenerative agriculture. Is it a farming revolution or evolution? Now, regen isn't particularly well defined. Mostly that it put good soil management at its center, but arguably that's the truth for all good farming practice. Ultimately, it's a food production system that put nature recovery at its center. The debate around farmland producing food but also delivering for nature is current. It's current, but it's disjointed, it's incomplete, but it's fast affecting all farmers. If regen is part of that solution, where it can deliver for nature, produce food, and lower emissions, does it need to be implemented at a revolutionary rate or slower and more careful at an evolutionary pace? Yes, a revolution will bring quicker change, deliver for nature, but could it lead to lowering production and ultimately food shortages? At an evolutionary pace, we're guaranteed to have the food production, but does it deliver quick enough for nature? The balance between nature recovery, lowering emissions, and delivering on food is a precarious balance, one that's current, but that data is only just emerging. So, what can farmers do to reach that balance much quicker? I'm Izak van Heerden for AgriLeader at AHDB. We're here at Groundswell now in its 8th year, and thank you very much for King's Crops for lending us their stand to broadcast from here. And I'm super excited to introduce our panelists here tonight. So let's start here on my left. Tom, tell us a bit about yourself, who you are, your social handles, all of that sort of stuff.
Well, I'm very excited to be here. I'm Tom. My handle is Farmer Tom on social media. I'm a mixed farmer, but I focus on the arable side of things, and I'm just passionate about showing people what happens on the other side of the farm gate.
My name is John Pawsey. I'm slightly more excited than Tom to be here, but I'm very easily excited. My Twitter handle is Handslope, and that describes our soil type, which soil is very important to us as organic farmers. So we're on a Handslope series, chalky boulder clay, just south of Bury St Edmunds in Suffolk.
Zoe.
Hello, my name's Zoe. I'm a farmer, very new farmer down in Kent. We run about 500 ewes and some cattle and some goats, and we sell our meat off the farm. On Instagram, I'm at the Chief Sherpherdess, and yeah,
Excellent.
that's me.
Flav.
My name is Flavian Obiero, pig farmer based in Hampshire. But as of last week, I've got sheep, and next week goats, so I don't know what I'm going to be. I'm just someone that's trying to make money so I can go back to Kenya and enjoy the weather. It's my first time at Groundswell. I'm on a sort of, I don't want to say journey, it sounds a bit poetic, but I'm enjoying learning different ways of farming now. And I think it's definitely given me a bit of a boost to enjoy farming more, because I was getting into a bit of a sort of lull stage after 13 years in pig farming.
Claire.
Hi, I'm Claire Whittle. I'm a farm vet, and I spend a lot of time talking to other farmers about poo, mainly about dung beetles. And I've also just launched my own business, which is the Regenerative Vet, because the world needs another consultant, definitely in farming. So yeah, there I am.
Oh gosh, it's on me now. Hello everyone, I'm Izzy Eames. I'm a Knowledge Exchange Manager at AHDB on Sales and Oilseeds. I'm also a tenant sheep and beef farmer from Lancashire. I feel completely underqualified to be here. and this cup is not full enough for the rest of the journey. So
It's not got coffee in either.
no.
Shh, don't tell anyone. As you can see, we've got a real mix of people here. Some, some very much experienced, some with less so, trying to learn. And that's the whole idea of the circle: to debate, to learn from each other, get the word out there. Remember, you can. So if you're struggling with any of these guys, sounds or visual, you can see it on the AHDB YouTube. But and follow them on whatever channel you like to. And also put in there your comments, your questions. We really want to get input from anybody listening. So that's what makes it a lively debate. So tell us where you're listening from, whether you're a member of the public or a farmer. So put that all in the comments. The livelier you make it, and the better for us and the easier for us. So you started off, and very much almost like a choir. You all in a choir at some point, and a bit of a canon fashion, building on the previous person's answer. Very quickly, tell us how you would define Regen Ags. And I'm going to start this side first. Izzy.
Oh, come to the professional first. No pressure. I was hoping that I was going to go last, and I can just say whatever they said. But no, I think regen farming. I think we're all still looking for the actual definition of it. And then every year there's a session at Groundswell, and it is what is regen farming. So I think we're all still figuring that out. But I suppose in my sort of mind, it's sort of bringing life back into the farm, bringing life back into your soils, into your communities, and yeah, just friendly, happy life, everything. Yeah.
What does it say on the Regen Vet website?
There isn't one. I've only just got a Nokia phone for a phone number, mate. So, but yeah, no. I'd probably say I'm going to use the Groundswell definition, which is a bit naughty, really, but it's any sort of food production or fibre production that improves the environment, basically. And I think the important thing, though, just is that it's a journey and it's not an absolute, and that's what it says on their website. So it doesn't matter where you are along in the process.
Excellent.
And the environment includes people too. Yeah, which is what I'm saying about communities.
Yeah, I would say it's like seeing a farm yesterday and talking about how, so long as all systems work together for me, and I'm not that good at reading, don't know whether that makes me dyslexic or whatever, but so I'm more practical, and I see it as you're working with the environment, you're making money because we live in a society now where money is important. And as a person doing it, me or the other people, I'm also enjoying what I'm doing. So for me, it's that whole sort of setup. That's how I see it.
Isaac, can I add to that?
Yeah.
I think I'd like to define a regenerative farmer. And I think it's somebody who loves to learn, but it's also somebody who's joyful. Yeah. When I walk around here, people aren't getting things right all the time, but I just find they're so joyful. They just love to learn. And that's what I'm seeing here, and that's what I see on this panel.
Yeah.
Excellent.
For me, I feel like sometimes I can be a little bit clueless, and I ask a lot of questions, and this is one of the only places where I ask questions and everyone is over happy to answer, and they won't just give you one answer and this is like gospel. They'll give you a few different options or a few different answers, and to me, it makes me feel part of something, which
Part
is
of the
quite
community, the tribe.
Yeah, it's quite an exciting place to be, really.
So no offense to the rest of you, but John, coming to the voice of wisdom here, you've been at this for a while.
Well, I mean, the difficulty is that, and the uncomfortable truth is that I'm still at the beginning of a learning curve, even after having been for a long time, because there's so much to learn. For me, going down a regenerative route was actually just about getting biodiversity, but especially nature back onto our farm. I mean, I just noticed it was depleting. It's about healthy soils as well. I think it's about fairness in the marketplace for the kind of things that we are producing, the way that we produce them, but also it's about, and people have mentioned this, about the health of farmers as well, and health of the people that we sell our produce to. And I want to just back up what you were saying about, and I didn't do this when I was farming non-organically, which is regenerative by default, is that I genuinely will be walking down the track and I feel overwhelmed by the wonderfulness of I know that's not a real word, of the kind of farm that we're living in, and I found it overwhelming, and I think that's a wonderful place to be if you are living and loving and working in the countryside.
I've been to your farm, John, and that's very clear.
You did become overwhelmed.
I was overwhelmed. I was overwhelmed.
Excellent. So why is this the solution? It does, like I mentioned in the intro, it's very much got this festival feel. It's got a feel-good factor around. Why do we think this is the part of the answer?
Yeah, I think you corrected it there by saying part of the answer rather than the solution, because I think there's more to it than just saying if you go Regen, it sorts everything out. And I think for me, just having 2 months into being a tenant farmer, I think the overwhelmingness, another new word, John is just talking about there, for me, because I'm learning, like, rather than just being a pig farmer and just looking after pigs, sending them to the abattoir every week and you're just carrying on like that. Now you've got a farm with a woodland, with grassland, with fields I can put sheep in, fields I can put goats in, fields I can put pigs in. I'm having to learn all that in the process, and for me, that's bringing that joy back as we're talking about. And I think normally, well, as a norm, the human's the last person that's thought of in these things, but we're the people that are doing it, or they're the people that are doing it. So yeah, I think it needs to start from the person and then go out there like that, I think.
So, Ethan, tell us a little bit about your background, because you've mentioned you're new to farming, but why did you start? So when you started farming, why are you going down this route? Tell us a bit about the background first, because that's interesting.
Okay. I grew up in Kent in the countryside, and then I basically moved to London. I was a hairdresser. I was very much in the world of drinking, partying, photo shoots, all that kind of stuff as a hairdresser. Very different from my life now. And yeah, so I met my other half and we decided to go into farming, and I wasn't a part of it at all. It was just his little hobby. It wasn't really going to go anywhere. And then I lost my dad, and I decided that actually the joy that I got from being outside, waking up when the sun comes out, those kind of little things, was quite a big thing for me. I hadn't felt that for a long time. And because it's just the two of us, we can kind of make it into what we want. So if we want to, I don't know, buy some goats, we can do that. And you can kind of mold it how you want. And so you can kind of, it's quite a nice feeling to be quite free. But because I'm learning farming from scratch, farming can be what I want it to be.
So where did the Regen seed, where was that planted?
Where was it? Probably, we took on a bit of ground, and it was in a scheme. And Chris, my other half, did a day with an agronomist, a botanist, and another guy. And he was like buzzing, like so excited. And I thought to myself, I want to feel like that. So he took me and he showed me, basically taught me what the guys had taught him. And I was like, I want flowers to grow here that haven't grown here for like 10 years, and weird things, like weird little things that got me excited. And then, then I kind of, it was the buzz really.
Excellent.
Interesting, there's 2 goat buyers amongst us.
We didn't know.
That's not a good sign. That's not
quite
a
small
thing.
panel. There's a lot of
We
goats.
haven't heard about the potential goat enthusiasts at the far end.
I don't know where that's coming from.
So it's a very new. It's a very new, like farming on like is new. So for me, I can kind of I'm not in bad habits and things like that. So yeah, I'll listen to anyone.
And I think that's the joy of
really.
the panel here. So some people with different experience, and what we've got here at Groundswell is that mixture of cross-pollination.
But I think also you were saying, there's the fact is you're new, and actually, fun enough, I wasn't brought up on a farm, so I didn't have that sort of received wisdom. But I think actually it is important because people who actually haven't farmed before, and certainly the guys who are working for us now have never worked on a conventional farm, and they're open to everything, and I think actually it's positive.
Yeah. Sometimes it can be seen as a negative because you're not knowledgeable and you don't know. But actually, on the whole, I feel quite fortunate to be in that position because I don't know any different.
No, yeah.
So,
Well,
yeah.
Claire, as a vet, then how come you went down this route and looking into it from a vet perspective?
Yeah. So I only actually found out. So I said I talked to farmers about poo. But the reason that came about is I read a book which a lot of you will know, which is Wilding by Isabella Tree. And in there,
I read that we had dung beetles in the UK, which I didn't know. And B, that the products that I was prescribing as a vet had really detrimental effects on them. And I was really shocked no one had told me this before. And so that was a bit of a kickstart, really. And then what I realised is that dung beetles are actually just part of an ecosystem, of which I think we've forgotten a little bit. And John mentioned before about health and the importance of health in farming. Sorry, dropping my live stream video. It was a shock. About the importance of health. And I think we forget, healthy livestock are part of, or should be part of, a healthy ecosystem on farm. And that means everything from the tiniest little bug those bugs really rely on, they need poo basically on the floor, but it's got to be healthy poo, and our animals have to be healthy. And a lot of the chemicals and the drugs and things that we use in veterinary sciences aren't necessarily that good for the environment. So a lot of it comes down to management and how we manage our animals to improve that health basically.
It's a relatively new area for AHDB. So why is AHDB looking at this? Why we got a presence at Groundswell? What's your take on that?
I mean, we're still sort of, like everyone, we're still in the sort of early phases of trying to understand more about it. And, we come to Groundswell, and very much last year we had a much smaller tent. We didn't really have much to say, whereas this year we've got a lot going on. We've had 4 speaker sessions, who John was chairing one of them. And we're just gauging interest and trying to understand it ourselves. And that's trying to get all of the people, all of our staff members, to try and come to Groundswell and get a bit more of an understanding and sort of get the buzz and get the hype from everyone else. Of what we do is providing independent research and evidence. So we're sort of doing that through monitor farms and strategic farms, where we've got a few farmers looking at regen practices, but they want to see it on a commercial farm and actually how it's tested. And we can provide that, and we can take the risk away a little bit. So we're open to suggestions and getting people on farm and showing what some of our monitor and strategic farms are doing. So it's just dipping the toe in the water before we start expanding into it, I think.
Excellent. That brings me on to a question. So how do we share that knowledge? It's great we've got a show like this, but so what's the other best practices or in this, and how do we get that around different areas?
I actually, picking up the Izzy's point about the AHDB, I mean, I've been lucky to be invited to go and speak at strategic and monitor farms, and I probably get lumped in with the sort of slightly left field speakers, but actually there's a huge amount of interest there. I mean, we've had big audiences going speaking around the country doing lots of AHDB. So I think the strategic and monitor farm structure is the perfect way to get the message across. So yeah, I mean, this is obviously great, but going around to different people's farms also is good as well, and seeing examples of what people are doing.
Well, I mean, I think as a conventional farmer, I had a hope of being a really good farmer, but here I haven't got a hope of knowing everything, because as you walk on this site, sure enough, you meet experts on dung beetles, but you meet experts on composting and mycorrhizal fungal associations and secondary metabolites and things, all those kinds of things that we can't individually have a hope of learning about, but actually collectively, via that kind of network and as you were saying, kind of the conversations and asking what might be a silly question, but risking that's how we learn, that's how we share things, and that's how I think the Regen network works, as well as the importance of the Regen mindset, which I think is so important. It's probably more important than defining what Regen is, I think.
One of the things I really like you said before, Tom, when we were having a chat, is that it was peer to peer. So you going to somewhere like cereals and saying, actually, these are all the things that have gone wrong, which people don't often or haven't done historically. No one wants to talk about their failures, but that's like a really important way of people learning as well.
It is. Farmers trust farmers. That's as great as a job as we could do at the AHDB, but ultimately it is that peer-to-peer learning, which is why it's monitor and strategic farm. So the 2 new entrants, you were talking about the buzz that you get from it. So what other things have you done to learn about it?
Podcasts. I listen to podcasts.
Any ones you?
One on fungi. I listen to by I think
Sheldrake.
Yes.
Oh, right.
Just shout that out so people can hear.
So, go on.
Yeah.
I can't.
His book's Untangled.
I can't think of the name.
Martin Sheldrake. Last year he filled the sweatiest tent, the most enormous, sweatiest tent. I was sitting on the floor for an hour to hear him talk about fungi. Hung on every word.
I thought a fun guy.
He was a fun guy.
Someone was going to go there.
Do you have kids by any chance? That was such a dad joke. Yeah, and yeah, that's probably I'm not very good at
Podcast.
YouTube and stuff like that. So I think podcasts. I don't have time to read books and things like that. So podcasts are quite good. And I'm a chatter, as you can probably tell. So just chatting to people, I will retain so much information. Like the only reason I know anything about farming is from being at the market ringside and asking questions to people that have been around a lot longer than me. That's how I learned everything. So
peer to peer, doesn't matter where it is.
Yeah. Completely.
Yeah, I'd say I'm similar to Zoe. I do a lot of miles in the car, going to the abattoir and stuff, and yeah, I listen to a lot of podcasts. And I also, for me, because I don't like reading, probably because I was forced to read by my dad when I was younger, I listen to a lot of sort of audiobooks and talking to people and visiting farmers and actually seeing what someone's doing. And back to your point about people talking about their mistakes, I think, especially when engaging with the public, not educating, engaging with the public, I think they're another part of this journey that I always forgotten. Because I think it's all good us sat here as people that care about this and know a little bit about this, and we're talking about it now, patting each other on the back for doing so well. But the people that are going to buy what we're producing have no idea or don't even care about it. What are we doing?
There's no point.
So I think for me, sharing that with them and everything, like at the moment I've got a pig that was tangled up in barbed wire, probably deserved it for escaping. So I'm treating it. It's quite bad. Shouldn't have shared it, but I have. And I've said, look, this pig's done this. I've seen worse. I think it's going to make it. This is what I'm doing. And I want to bring the public on the journey, because it happens. So, again, we can't forget the public.
Which, and just to remind everybody listening, if you publish and tell us stats and tell us the questions to these guys, it makes us so much easier. My job so much easier if I can see the questions coming in from the public. If you're from farming as well, send give us your thoughts, good, bad, and ugly.
Criticize us.
Make it
juicy.
Have a look at the AgriLeader websites and put in your comments either on these guys' feeds or on the AHDB YouTube. Somebody's got that feeding into me, so please put it on there.
Isaac, can I add to that? I think Twitter's a fantastic place to learn.
Yeah, social media.
I absolutely love Twitter. I've spent a lot of time scrolling through. It's always fresh stuff coming on. But the only thing I would say about Twitter, and this is what I was going to bring up at some point, is how do we stop certain farmers bringing down other farmers who are looking at going into regenerative agriculture?
Facebook's the same.
I absolutely hate. If I ever see that, I just block it, because you need to be constructive. And sometimes on Twitter, I found my house on Twitter. You can find if you answer a question, someone will give you an answer to it. But I just find sometimes on Twitter, with certain farmers are bringing other farmers down, and I just think, how are we meant to learn together if you're constantly putting people down? Everyone's system's different.
But that's all walks of life, though. It's just that I think farmers are quite inward, aren't we? We work we're just on it all the time. So the social media and things like that is your way of communicating and things like that. So from a hairdresser's point of view, in the salon, you'd get the little click with the ones that bitch about other people. It's just like that, but through a screen on social media, it's not okay. But
the way I see social media, it's like real life. There are people that you meet at work or in the street or at a pub at the weekend that are going to annoy you. But the way I see it is, especially for me, it's quite a big thing to get people that are from non-farming background, people of colour, into farming. I want to see that person that has a dodgy view, that's lived in a village all his life, has never seen a black person, because we can discuss it. And I'd rather sit in a pub with someone that's completely different to me, opposing everything I say, because I'm going to learn from him and hopefully he's going to learn from me. We feel sit in an echo chamber saying, oh, dung beetles, lovely, lovely, lovely. We don't learn anything. If you're opposite to me, I think having opposing things is good as well.
In a good constructive way.
In a constructive way. Shooting each other down is never okay.
Mark and I was at something last night, and they said, some people light up the room when they walk in. Some people, the room light up when they walk out, and I think that's true for. We had a great. We had a great question from Heerden Shepherd, saying, "So how do we get new people into the industry when it's so capital intensive?" And we've got two. people like that. So you told us a little bit on that, and you know, but how did you get that first foot on the ladder?
That's a really hard question.
What was your first bit of ground that you that you and Chris got? How did that start?
He is a very impulsive man, and went to the market, and there was some cheap Suffolk mule. Bought them.
And where did he graze them?
Well, he had nowhere to graze, so on the way out of the market, he said to a guy that he's chatted to a few times, "Can I put them at yours?"
So just do it.
Take a massive risk.
All above board, obviously, guys. And yeah, so we subletted off. But yeah, that's not like a normal. That's not a normal thing. Like, people aren't normally that crazy, but here we are.
So I think sometimes the question's got to be a little bit crazy.
Sometimes, and if you work with sheep, you've got to be a lot crazy. Like, it's not.
Goats even worse.
It's not. Oh.
Yeah.
So Flavson, tell us a bit about your journey.
I think I would say, because I got a chance to learn on other people's farms and use other people's money to try different things, and I'm lucky enough to have had farming families to allow me that. When the council farm came up, and I wasn't planning to, I didn't even know that was a thing, and I applied 2 days before deadline. I think the fact that I had that experience working on other people's farms, I'm almost ready to make that risk because I know I can make it work. Like, I know destination, I know where I'm heading, and I know how I need to get there. I know it's going to be bumpy, so I think for me that's almost a motivation that I know I can't fail. That's not an option. I have to make it work. So that's my drive. But the 13 years working for other people helped. Yeah, I'd say.
John, you said you're not from a farming background originally either.
Well, I was from a farming background, but my parents divorced when I was 4, and I was brought up in a town, and so yeah, so I wasn't like a farm boy. I never actually really wanted to farm particularly, but I had to leave school early, and with no qualifications, and so I ended up by going into a family farm. But I think going back to younger people getting into farming, what we found on our farm is that all the ancillary bits and pieces on the farm, like hedge cutting, working in woods, conservation bits and pieces, we found a lot of younger contractors coming in and buying a second-hand tractor, putting on a second-hand hedge cutter, and certainly we've got a lot of younger people working our farms, but coming in through the contracting route. So even though you're not directly probably farming to the full extent, you're still involved with the sort of world of farming, and I think that is an entry. And a lot of those guys, boys and girls, are sort of getting on to sort of we got quite a legacy of county council farms in Suffolk as well, and in Cambridgeshire as well. So there are ways of getting into it. I think the confusion is and the difficulty with how it all works in this country is there's the land ownership bit and there's the active bit of farming. And the thing that excites me is the active bit of farming, and that's the creative bit to it. So I think there are ways that young people can get into farming.
I think one of the possibilities with the Regen thing as well is the business stacking of enterprises. So if you're an arable farmer and you wanted someone on your land with livestock, you could maybe get it, rather than try and do it yourself and not having that livestock experience, is you can get people to do that for you, graze it for you, or you can get someone to have pastured poultry or whatever it is. So you bees, anything along those lines, and starting that route into farming. But I think it does require a little bit of helping hand and a little bit of give from people to be able to do that.
But that's the only way we've managed to, maybe we chatted to someone and got excited about a practice that maybe we've seen here, and then we kind of team up with one of the big arable boys in the area or things like that, and you kind of twist their arm and say, give us a go kind of thing, and they take a chance on you and say, okay, put 10 sheep, 20 sheep, whatever, and we'll see how it goes. And then once you've got your foot in the door, you're helping each other out. Obviously, everyone here knows you're helping each other out, but then you're given, people take a chance on you as a young new entrant, they're taking that chance, and you're not going to mess it up because that's the route you want to go down. You try that little bit harder, and then before you know it, you've got a lovely relationship.
So you've got to understand what the opportunities are, but also be inspired to want to do them.
Yeah,
I mean that's what James Rebanks is great for, that and kind of inspiring, us with what's going on. But I find there are so many roles within farming. It's not about, like I do, stand in the middle of a field chewing a piece of straw. There are
In a check shirt.
In a check shirt. There are so many roles, and that's what I want to get out there, is that, if you're into software programming or mechanics or you're a technician or a drone pilot, there are roles for you. And going back to that previous question, I really believe farming being the answer to so many things. We don't just need people like me standing in the middle of a field shouting at the dog. We do need the brightest and the best across all those areas.
To quickly add on to Tom's point, is the notion of part-time farming. So like when we first got a tenancy, for me that was a big deal. Like 61 acres, I'm like, oh my god, I wanted to go for 100. I'm glad I didn't, because 61 is a lot to me anyway. And you're getting questions like, oh, that's not going to pay, is it? I'm like, how do you know? Oh, you're going to have to work somewhere else.
You don't know anything about it.
I come from Kenya, for those that don't know, and back home I've got friends that are cardiologists and they farm. I've got a cousin that's an architect. He farms avocados, sends them to Europe. My uncle's an IT guy, avocados, sends them to Europe. Whereas here, if you're a farmer, you have to be a farmer. Like, our brains can do more than just one job, so why not tap into that? Like,
you mentioned that at the start. We've got a south of EU station on Zoe's Instagram saying Regen has to be financially viable. So let's go down that route a bit. And how do we make sure it's financially viable? Because otherwise, and that is the ultimate thing. And it won't survive if it's not viable. So, John, I'm going to come to you first here. You've been going, so what?
Well, I mean, the organic thing is slightly different to the Regen thing, because it's got a European law sort of governing its standards. So. And from that, the customer understands what they're getting from organic produce, and love or hate the organic movement. I mean, they have generated an increased price. It's usually, and certainly in the sort of combinable crop world, there's about £100 a tonne more than the conventional price. But it's a very difficult one, isn't it? Because actually, who pays? Does the customer pay, or does the market pay? It's very difficult. Certainly looking at the new sort of SFI standards, is that all the things that we can tap into just by the things that we're doing, we can actually tap into quite a lot of money. So I suppose that's the taxpayer paying, but it has to be supported in some way. I think the difficulty is that on our own farm, where we've got increasing soil health, we've got nature is recovering on our farm. And also we're a carbon sequesterer rather than an emitter. Is that the question is about the price of food? Is that can you afford to buy it, or can you not afford to buy it? Because actually we're looking for nature recovery. We're looking to get our businesses to net zero. It's got to be paid for by somebody. And that's the difficult thing. It's nobody wants food price inflation. So maybe it comes through the government, but ultimately it's paid by the taxpayers. But maybe that's a fairer system for those kind of outcomes to be paid for.
Yeah, but John, you've done a great job of finding other routes to market which make your business pay. But I think I've only been a farmer for 7 years, but I'm inspired by you two, because nobody's told you, or no one can tell you, it's not going to work.
No,
you are driven. You've both found your own markets direct to customer, and people are buying from you because you've got a great product. But they're also buying from you because of you. You're the brand as well. And you've both done that. I'm not going to sell into the mainstream. I'm not going to take my sheep back to the market. I'm going to talk to my customer, tell them what we do on our farm. I'm going to share why I'm excited about farming, and that's why I think.
But that's your USP.
That is your.
You've got to have, and
certainly.
we've spoken about this before. Like, you've got whatever your USP is.
Unique selling point for those that don't know what it stands for.
You have to know what it is, I think, to succeed. Especially if you're not going down like a traditional.
Because if you don't love it, you can't get your customers to love it, and that's again back to the mindset.
And I think the point Tom's making about us to sort of not want to sell the oat market, or not being told that we can't make it work, is that if all farmers can do it. And I'd love one day that farmers say, okay, let's say dairy farmers, if you're not going to pay us at least cost of production plus a bit, we're not selling any milk. And you can see in the pig industry now, people have started selling off. This week, we're nearly 25,000 pigs less killed this week than last year. That's because people have thought, okay, we've lost so much money, we're out. And then we're just going to start importing.
It's the
and
same
then
with the fruit, isn't it, this year?
where do we go with the net zero thing? If we just constantly, it's just messed. It's absolutely messed up.
I'm not sure us guys here are going to save the world.
Oh, I'll give it a good
be
go.
honest, but if you're passionate, let me finish. But if you're passionate about something, then other people will be passionate as well, and that's a good place to start, isn't it?
But also, I think the whole regenerative story is such a fantastic story. When we converted to organic 25 years ago, there was a lot of passion in that. It sort of seems to have fizzled a little bit. But when I go to regenerative agricultural events, I mean, the passion from the people that you talk to, I mean, that's they can really sell stuff. And also the other thing is that, with the kind of things that regenerative agriculture is promoting, is that it has all the answers. And and I think that's incredibly. I really do think we can change the world. I think we can.
Yeah.
And we do have the answers. And but it's actually translating that message into something that people can understand. That's the one thing the organic market has really struggled with. It's key.
What I mean is we're having a good go at it.
Yes.
But I feel that matters more than us going in and saying this is the route to get there. We're all just having a good go in our own way collectively. Is what I mean.
I recently.
I think that one of the tough challenges to farming is that farmers don't care, and so I think when you show them they do care, that's when people really get on board. And it's not just caring about your produce, it's caring about water, it's caring about air, it's caring about climate change, and that's all the things that our customers care about. And that is, I think that's key. I think that's really key.
It is. You've got to connect it. I recently heard a talk, and they were looking at the sort of 1970s, 1980s, where we just had the Spanish flu, the First World War, and people were really struggling. And then after that, we had the Roaring 20s, and very liberating on all sorts of fronts. And it's a really good time. And so this talk was saying, are we on the cusp of that? Some people have been through COVID and the war in Ukraine. It hasn't been a good time, but are we on the cusp? And is this maybe the time to grasp that because people want that, and this could be part of that?
I read I think it was Patrick Whitefield's comment about the question of whether or not what you do can save the world, just following on from what Zoe said. And I think exactly what she said and what he said is that relies on too many things for us to even begin to think about. But the only question you can actually ask yourself is how you want to live your life, and it's whether you want to be part of the problem or you want to be part of the solution. And that's the only thing you can actually do. You can't. The thought of saving the world is just far too big and far too complex for any of us to understand. But I quite like that.
And with the public too, is thinking that you've got. So as a farmer, my simple way of thinking is we've got the government that does policy, and then you've got the biggest customer, the person with the biggest reach is a supermarket. So in my opinion, not AHDB, it's in Flav's opinion, I don't think the government care enough, and I don't think the supermarket care enough. And they won't listen to us, or they haven't yet, but they will listen to the public. If the public were to say we're not going to go to Aldi for 1 week because you're not selling British strawberries.
Or other supermarkets.
Yeah, or other supermarkets. They'll be finished. They'll be finished. So I think if we bring the public on the journey with us, and they sort of buy into it with us, I think they are our get out of jail card.
Connecting to the customers.
Definitely.
They're the main people that matter, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned organic earlier, but I've got a question here. We've already got organic. What's different? Why is Regen different to that? Why do we need something else? John, I'm going to come to you.
Well, I mean, it's really interesting.
Thank God it wasn't coming to me.
I'm going to ask the rest of you as well.
Helen Browning, in a session this morning, said a really interesting thing when she was asked about whether or not Regen should be certified. And she said not at the moment because it's got fire in its belly. And when you've got fire in your belly, you try different things. And I think certification probably has a negative effect on that, or a set of standard rules that you have to follow. And I was thinking to myself, actually, I came into organic farming where actually the embers of organic were just flickering because I don't know, it was sort of stagnated. And I was actually just wondering to myself, what does organic? Because that when Regen has to be certified, or the market requires it needs to be certified because people don't understand what it is because it's not a set of rules. Is that could organic be in a position to attract those people at that point? But what does the organic market have to do to relight the fire that it originally had. So personally, as far as the standards are concerned, is I quite like being operating in a set of rules, because actually there's things you can do and things you can't do, and actually I think it makes me more inventive to get around all the bits and pieces I can and can't do to work out a system that works for me. But at the moment, there's sort of clear differences between Regen and organic, and that's great for us, because it means that people understand what we're doing and maybe a bit sort of uncertain about what Regen does. But at the end of the day, we're all about we talk the same language. We talk about healthy soils, we talk about more nature, we talk about healthy people, we talk about healthy food. So that's all positive.
You're the second person that I met that said they like to live by the rules. I didn't know people like that existed personally. But anybody else on the organic things, and any thoughts on what's the difference between organic? What's the different selling points, and on what John just said?
I think there's probably quite a lot to learn from organic farmers, and I think there's a lot that regen farmers and a lot of conventional farmers can learn from organics. We don't know which way it's going. We're at a massive crunch point in terms of input usage and efficacy, and how can we look at organic farmers, learn from them, and potentially move down that way. But I think what Jonathan said, I think what John said about echoing about we're actually all under the same umbrella. We all have the same understanding and the same passion, and there's clear differences in sort of, like I said, the certification and the practices, but the mindset's the same. So I wouldn't isolate them too much.
No.
It's back to your point about the Twitter, sense shouting. It's just such a nicer place when everybody can try and learn from each other rather than breaking down.
I'm not a particularly controversial person, and I feel this is where I should say that I've got some very good friends who are organic farmers. But organic farming at the moment is in a place where it's 3% of the market. And if there is certification or not, only 3% of the market in 25 years' time for regenerative farming or regenerative produce, I would probably deem that a failure on the trajectory we're at the moment, with the potential to change things. And I think regenerative and organic will go together with that. I think it'll actually that fire will come into organic as well, because we don't want to be. It doesn't need to be 3% of the market. If you're growing produce which is fixing carbon, cleaning the air and water, making people healthier, it doesn't need to be 3% of the market in 25 years' time. It needs to be.
I think that's a really important point, and actually I have a real problem with this, because actually we are still friends, but I'm going to agree with you, because actually the organic market has failed, because we're still at 3%, and we're at 3% when I came into it 20 years ago. I feel that Regen has a huge amount more to go, and the reason why I think that is because when you go organic, you basically cut off all the suppliers you've been dealing with. You basically lose all your friends, and because nobody's coming around the farm to sell you anything. Whereas in the Regen, you still maintain those relationships. And actually, you just have to look around Groundswell to see, I didn't come on the first year, but I came on the second year. There were none of these people here. Everybody wants to, because actually they still have something to sell you. Yeah. The only thing that I would warn regenerative farmers about is that because you're not buying their chemicals anymore, they're trying to find something else. And the biggest liberation for me when I went organic was I just felt liberated from not having all those inputs. And I should be experimenting with biostimulants and other bits and pieces. I don't really need stimulating anymore, but I should do. But I'm slightly worried about going down that input trap again. But I think that the Regen movement still keeps people together, and I think that's a positive. And I think that, and certainly the suppliers, they'll all be learning together.
Carry on.
A question I've got about the organic side, just like sort of pig farming, look at cost of production. As a product, if consumers are struggling, let's say at the moment, talk about the cost of living. If consumers are struggling to pay for normal food, i.e. non-organic food, if I was to go organic, how do I justify it to the consumer that you got to pay X amount more? So that's question one. Yeah. And two is, how do we go away from the almost having a society where it's not written anywhere, but for you to eat good, for you to afford to go to a farm shop or to buy organic, you have to be a particular level of society. Whereas from as a Kenyan, whether you're living in a mud hut or in a mansion, you can still go to the market and buy fresh fruit.
We had exactly the same
that
question
I'm trying to struggle with. Even though I've been here
Griffiths,
16 years, I'm trying to struggle how I get that around my head.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, the one thing I suppose we can be proud of as farmers in this country is we produce food to all different price points. So there'll be some people who put more value in buying organic food because when you think of all the externalities of producing food in this country, so what we're not paying for is the loss of nature. We're not paying for our customers are not paying for more pollution of our rivers and the extraction of that from the water companies. And so all I would say is that there is a cost to producing food in different ways, and we have to understand that. And also as customers and people buying food, we have to take responsibility for that. Now, of course, it does cost more money because usually in those systems, yields are lower. But we have to be honest about it. But I completely accept that food produced in a way that is carbon negative, is more friendly to nature. It does generally yield less, and it costs more money to produce. So we make choices, and I don't know how that all rounds at the end of the day. It goes back to the question, whether the customer should pay or maybe the government should pay. I don't know, through the tax system, which is probably fair because it taxes richer people more than poorer people. It's a big question.
I would agree with you on that, John. I think one of the things that bothers me is a lot of the time with a lot of things that happen in the words of the consumer. So it's like everything's the consumer's responsibility, whether or not you choose to buy something that's in recyclable packaging or not. That I don't think that's the responsibility of the consumer. I think that's the responsibility of whoever's producing that. And just like it's not saying, well, people on a lower budget aren't able to afford that food. Again, that's not their responsibility. They shouldn't have to be involved in that decision making. That food should be accessible. That nutrient dense, good food should be accessible to everyone, organic, etc. All of those things, and there needs to be doing it, and it probably is. It probably is.
Isn't part of that the process side of it? You can actually still get a decent shop and yes, and food at a relatively good cost, but it's the processed stuff, the microwave meals, that's where the problem line, and that's down to education, isn't it?
But they're also
down
cheaper.
To the supermarket?
Yeah, they're cheaper than.
It used to be that you could buy fresh fruit and veg and meat cheaper than you could buy a processed meal. The thing is now you can buy a processed meal cheaper than those things sometimes, quite often.
If you think about going to a fast food, you could feed your kids from a fast food place for like a tenner. What are you going to get from a supermarket?
So should those that's my point, should the processed stuff be taxed more? Should it, because they it's got a knock-on effect down the line on health and NHS and all of that. So
there are all those hidden costs in food, unfortunately.
But are we getting away from the regenerative point, possibly with the organic assumption that in order to farm better, then we have to produce lower yields? I would say that that's not the case, and I get asked all the time, what about the yield penalty? And I think if you just drop out tillage, you might see a yield penalty. But if you banging on about the regen mindset, if you're covering the whole plethora of regenerative things that you're doing, the levers that you can pull on, then I don't expect to see a yield penalty. So we should be able to produce really good value food and still achieving all these other elements as well. Now the government might, there might be some discounts via supermarkets or whatever where we're not quite allocating for our full environmental impact, but actually we should be producing the same or even better yield through regenerative farming.
Yeah, I had exactly that question. Can we realistically implement widespread regen ag and produce enough food? Does this rely on more intensive production systems like vertical or indoor farming systems?
Yes,
What's your
No, I think we need to find better ways of doing it regeneratively. I think exactly what Tom's just said there, the fact that you can get really good yields off doing that, the fact you can, that idea again, going back to stacking enterprises, you can have, there is farms in this country which are dairy farms on arable farms. So there's ways of producing more food from the same area of land without having to use ghost acres or feeding animals or grains off farms, which, which aren't great for the environment. You've got to be very creative with it, and farmers are the most creative people to be able to do that, really.
One thing I'm definitely learning now that I'm sort of farming my own right and talking to different people is that I see not sort of doing something the way you've always done it and just wanting to choose one thing. I see that as lazy. And for me, I got to a point in pig farming, commercial pig farming, just doing the same thing all the time. I just got bored. And back to the whole thing that as a species, we call ourselves the most intelligent species. Let's use it, because there's so much more we can do. But just because we've done things a particular way and it works, if you're not broken, don't fix it. You can improve it. We're not saying.
Or is it fear though that stops people from making the change?
And I think
Is it?
change, people's got a natural resistance to change. There's a saying of people want change, but they don't want to be changed. So, and how do we get that? Let's talk about that. Yeah.
I do. I do, but I'm sure there's plenty of people that feel like the way they're doing it is safe and it's proven to work. So why would we change?
There's also debt, isn't there? So a lot of I work with a lot of dairy farmers, and it's financial. So if you have a big farm, you have a big system, you've got big sheds that you've put up, you've put a lot of money into that. The only thing you can do is produce, and that means having high yield. So unless farmers are supported to come out of those systems, that will continue, because there's no way you're stuck in that cycle.
So talking about debt as well is the whole thing that we talk about, attracting more people into farming, young people. But after being in a new entrant sort of meeting, said we can do all these things, but until it's profitable, until someone can make a living out of it, no one's going to want to do it. If you're getting paid more to do another job, there's no one who wants to come and do farming. So the whole supply chain we keep mentioning, that fairness needs to be in there for farmers to.
And it's maybe back to John's point earlier about the people coming onto your farm. I think people's been sold the myth that you have to produce at this level. And from a dairy background, I've seen people changing from a high system to a lower system, and and it's worked perfectly well for them. So it's having that open mindset, I guess.
I think as well, we did a paper quite a while ago. I think it's 2018. It's characteristics of top performing farmers, and actually from that, it found that high output doesn't relate always to high profitability. And you can sort of get disguised by it, and you think it's all going well. But if you're not actually looking at your costs and looking after your people, then it doesn't always relate to being profitable. And then I think another point, holding some of the things holding regen farming back, is the fact you get a lot of farmers. I mean, I saw all sorts of farmers across the northeast. You can imagine what the Yorkshire lot are like, and they always say, this is what my granddad did 40 years ago. It's just a circle. It's just coming round. It'll be a phase. It'll be out. But it's not, though. I don't think it is. And all arrows are pointing that way. And I don't think it is going to be a phase. I think it's very much here to stay. So just trying to get them involved in that. I think that's what we all try and do.
Excellent. Bringing it back to the sort of more regen, the basics of it. Sussex Ben on Zoe's Instagram said, as an agronomist, I'd love to see more livestock on arable farms. What suggestion do you have to encourage this?
Go to the market and buy some more livestock.
Go to the market and buy.
That's one way of doing it.
Send me an email.
I've
I've got some sheep that love an electric fence.
Tamworths.
Yeah.
Got some Tamworth pigs you can have. Fence trained.
I think it's all, personally, I think it's word of mouth. I think sometimes these big arable farms are stuck in this rut of this is what we've always done, this is what my father's done, blah, 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 blah. And it's quite high risk, isn't it, to introduce something new. All they've heard is so-and-so moaning about the sheep getting on the road, out the electric fence. Oh, they've made such a mess, this, that and the other. But once you've got your foot in the door, word does spread quite fast. So like for years we've been begging some big farms near us to let us graze like their I call it accidental wheat. That's not what it's called. It's called volunteers. And so we finally got to the point now where we grazed a lot of volunteers last year. And then this year, we've had people ringing us saying, can we use your sheep this year? I heard it went really well down at so-and-so. So now we're at the point where we've got way more winter grazing because so-and-so's told so-and-so, probably at the pub or livestock market, that actually, I mean, tell me if I'm going on a tangent, but one of the farms near us, we grazed half the wheat. So they put a drone up and you could see the clear difference between what we'd grazed and what we hasn't. There was, a photographic evidence of what our sheep had done. And I think sometimes that could just be proof enough for someone to say, do you know what, we'll do a little trial on this field. The agronomist then comes in, tests the soil, the yield, whatever. This isn't my field to talk about, but test whatever they test. And they say, wow, like that's done a really good job. And then before you know it, you have people like we finally have now ringing us saying, would you like to graze ours? And then we make sure there's no sheep with horns behind the electrics. We make a good impression and then we're sweet. But yeah, I think sometimes that's all it takes is just to get your foot in the door. And then before you know it.
It's what Tom was saying. So, you when you sell to the public or sell your product, but there's also when you sell yourself in that community, isn't it?
Yeah. And just do what you say you're going to do. If someone gives you a chance to graze a bit of land or whatever, and it's absolutely peeing it down with rain and you're concerned about them, like we had it last year, it absolutely hammered it down, and we're sitting at the other farm like, oh my god, we need to get those lambs. It was on wheat, we were like, we need to get it off, like, because if we make a bad impression and wreck the wheat, that's what they'll remember about you. So you've just got to be a bit mindful of making a good impression, doing what you said you're going to do. If you say you're going to get them off on the Friday, you move the world to get them off on the Friday. And sometimes it will just be what it takes, I guess. Yeah.
More livestock on arable grounds. Your thoughts on that?
Well, we reintroduced sheep onto our farm in 2014-15 because we wanted to extend our rotation. But exactly the same reason you were talking about. It's actually sheep potentially bring a huge amount of plus points to an arable rotation. Also, the other thing with sheep, it was a relatively low capital cost reintroducing. They're cheaper to buy. Electric fencing, just buying Bowsers off eBay to sort of drag them around the farm. It was very cheap. And I loved the sheep. Having just been an arable farmer, just seeing a sort of moving landscape of animals on the farm is rather wonderful.
Are you feeling all right?
No, I love it. Well, funny enough, actually, everyone said, the sheep, wakes up in the morning and actually tries to work out how it's going to kill itself. But actually, our sheep have been fantastic. Yeah. We've got these New Zealand Romneys, and they've just been absolutely brilliant. They're a bit too woolly, so I've been looking at the hairy ones down the road. But no, they bring a huge amount to our system, really. And they sort of, they're part of that sort of nutrient cycle as far as I'm concerned.
Claire, on your, you obviously work with livestock farmers being a vet, and have you seen some of them going on to neighbours? And
I work with a lot of dairy anyway, really, so no, I wouldn't say an awful lot. I would like to see a lot more, to be honest with you, Izak. I think that would be great. We don't have a lot of arable around. It does seem, it's quite funny. I feel like maybe historically there would have been more mixed farming around the country, whereas even as a farm vet now, so I worked in Dorset when I first graduated. It was much more beef and sheep and a little bit of dairy, and now where I work now, it's like 95% dairy. If I worked on the East Coast, it would be pigs, and I'd like to see that all getting a bit more mixed in again, mainly because I want to feel a bit more like James Herriot. But yeah.
Cool. I think, and just to round it off, one or two take-home messages for the people listening in. What's your main, either from the panel here tonight, from Groundswell, from your journey, in Regen so far? So what's your 1, 2, maximum 3 take-home messages? And I'm going to start at that side at Izzy this time.
I've got to stop doing
Again.
Sorry. No, I apologise. I did start at you last time, so you've got plenty of time to think about it.
Minutes.
Yeah, what they said.
I would say if you're a farmer, it's all about mindset and learning. So just keep going for it, keep asking questions. If you're not a farmer, I would say thank you for buying British produce. Thank you for choosing regenerative produce, and you'll make all the difference.
I would say, Groundswell is full of lots of amazing people doing lots of amazing things, and you will hear things here that you think, oh my goodness, would that work on my farm? But actually, my top tip would be to go home, take something on board, and just do one thing different. Just do one thing different.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would probably be mine. Is if you hear something and you think it's crazy, just give it a little go, because it's probably not that crazy once you get going. But at the start, you'll be like, but that's probably mine, I would say.
Keep going.
Yeah, crazier the better.
Yeah, I'd say for me, for farmers, keep learning. when you stop learning, I think you're going to start worrying then. And for the public, I would say we'll keep engaging with you. Well, I'll try and get other farmers to engage with you, and keep engaging with us and keep supporting us by buying our produce.
I would say just look a little bit closer. So like whether it's looking at your soil, whether it's looking at bugs on your trees, just there's loads of stuff going on out there, like on your farms, biodiversity wise, etc. And also to Flavian, that dung beetles are ace. You cannot oppose a dung beetle.
Dung beetles rule.
After I met Claire last year, we went straight home and we were literally on our hands and knees rifling through the cowpats, and I was texting her like, "Is a blue-bellied one good?" She was like,
There was like 50 messages, 50 pictures of dung beetles in it. Is this a dung beetle? Yeah, mate. It's a dung beetle.
I think probably my bit of advice is you have the slightest bit of curiosity about this is to feed it with everything you've got. You know, if you are slightly interested, just go Google it, Twitter, go to Monitor Farms or any sort of discussion groups. There's so much out there, and you do have the time to go to them. You know, I think a lot of the time we make ourselves so busy that we sort of just don't give ourselves the opportunity to keep learning. And I think, you know, just feed the curiosity, keep the fire going. Like we're talking
it's
about
very
organic.
inviting. Like the people that are interested enough to educate themselves, you don't have to be scared, because it's like the one group of people I've been in my lifetime that make you feel included, and they will share knowledge whether you ask for it or not.
Never a stupid question.
No.
Never go home wishing you'd asked something. You know,
Never.
people are so supportive.
Guys, you've been absolutely smashing. I'll come around and just remind people of who you are in a minute. But it just leaves me to say thank you very much for everybody that's been... sorry, my heart just had a beat there. Right. Thank you to everybody listening from home. Your questions have been absolutely smashing. If you want to find out more about AHDB and the AHDB AgriLeader program, just Google us, AHDB AgriLeader, look at what we do. The next circle is on the 19th of July, back with a familiar face. We're doing it live from Rebecca Wilson's farm. She's just been to the exports conference. We're going to look at all things exports with Joe Seals from YouTube, and Charlotte as well. So looking, it's going to be called this green and pleasant land. Oh no, Pastures Green, something like that. All things exports, of how we export and what that means to farmers. So 19th of June, tune into that. Which, let's go around quickly and just remind people of who we are. And this time I'm going to come to Izzy first.
Izzy Eames, Knowledge Exchange Manager for Cereals and Oilseeds at AHDB, and a beef and sheep tenant farmer from Lancashire, just mixing it all up a little bit.
Claire Whittle, the regenerative vet, and I didn't say before, but I only really do Instagram now, but it's at Dr. Dowhittle. Yeah.
Flavian, Obiero, pig farmer, Hampshire, the Kenyan pig farmer everywhere.
Excellent. I'm Izak, AgriLeader, and just to say thanks again to Kings for allowing us to be on their stand. Come on, Zoe, who are you?
I'm Zoe, and I'm at the Chief Sherpherdess on Instagram. I am on Twitter, but it's very basic. So,
John Pawsey, organic farmer from Suffolk. On Twitter, I'm at Hanslope, currently not followed by James Rebanks, but I don't mind at all.
Mic drop.
okay, we're done now.
And I'm Farmer Tom, regenerative farmer and life enthusiast.
And handles?
Hey.
Is that where you're at?
Search Farmer Tom.
Farmer Tom.
Yeah, you'll probably get me.
He's all over it like a rush.
Are you the original one?
I'm not the original Farmer Tom.
Guys, you've been absolutely smashing. Thank you very much. I think we're off
you.
to the Earthworm Arms to do some regenerations of ourselves. So thanks to everybody that's listening, that's been listening. And so, yeah, we'll see you next month. Thank you.